Whitey Watkins going to get to the bottom of it now. Nice enough to join us, the outstanding Sixers beat writer with the Philly Inquirer, Keith Pompey. Thanks for your time, Keith. How are you today, sir?
Hey, I'm doing well. Thanks for having me on the show, y'all.
Oh, you're very, very welcome. Pardon me for asking you a very ignorant question. What is the significance, Keith, of a trade request in the NBA today when a team is not actually obligated to trade a player who requests one?
Hey, I mean, you know what? It's funny. They make up their own rules nowadays, right? Like, not, it's kind of like, well, at least I give James credit. He's asking for a trade in the expiring contract. Typically, the guys get that bag, and then after they get paid, they're like, "Okay, I want to be traded now. I want to
Yeah,
go.
yeah.
I got my money. I want to be traded."
Keith, I want to read this quote from Daryl Morey yesterday on Philadelphia radio. If we don't get either a very good player or something we can turn into a good player, we're not going to do it. And that's talking, of course, about moving on from James Harden. What, in your opinion, is a very good player that's out there that would interest Daryl Morey?
I think when we're talking about, uh, a very good player, when we're talking about the Clippers, right? Because that's the team that he's talking about. We're talking about maybe a Paul George or a Kawhi Leonard type of thing. But we both know, everybody knows that they're not willing to give that up for James Harden.
Right.
I mean, Daryl's talking about, he wants an all-star caliber player or an all-star in return. If not, give him, he'll take, a couple of your role players, but he also wants a bunch of draft picks to where he can flip those draft picks and also get an all-star player with that. So yeah, I mean, I think that's a tough ask for them right now to get that for James Harden.
Right.
Keith Pompey, pardon me. Keith Pompey joining us from the Philly Inquirer. To what extent, Keith, were the Sixers maybe blindsided by Embiid's suggestion last week that maybe he'd be better off someplace else?
I don't think they were blindsided at all. I don't think they could have been. I mean, I don't think they should have been. The thing about the 76ers are, like everyone has been saying, there's going to come a point in time where Joel is going to let it be known that, if things don't work out, I'm going to be out of here, right? And I feel like that was a message. Like the fans got upset, but I felt like that was more of a message to Daryl Morey. And the reason being is if you look at the 76ers and you look at the what's happening, right now in the 76ers on paper last year they had the third best record in the Eastern Conference. You look and you see what the Boston Celtics are doing, right? Making moves. You look at the Milwaukee Bucks. The Milwaukee Bucks, they re-signed their players and they also got some more complementary players that can help them. Well, you look at the 76ers, the rhetoric coming out of the draft was they're going to get into the second round. They're going to get a steal out of the second round. There was a lot of guys to be had. Nothing. And then you talk about free agency and you see where, like, the free agents that they had, they didn't bring them back. And then when you look at it, you see their top free agent was Paul Reed, who was their backup center. So they basically re-signed him. Joel Embiid is the MVP. Arguably, well, he's one of the best two centers in the league, but they have more centers than they have guards on this team. So if you're looking at if you're Joel Embiid, it's like, yo, what are we doing here?
Mm-hmm.
So I felt like that message was for Daryl Morey to say, look, if you don't get this thing right, it's going to come a time where I'm going to ask to get out of here.
I heard Daryl also say yesterday that it's incredibly important to pair Joel up with, Joel being one of the best players on earth, pairing him up with a top, teammate. Is there any hope that Tyrese Maxie could potentially just be that guy?
Yeah, he could. He could. I mean, Tyrese Maxey is he was trending in the right direction last year before he got injured. And then when he came back, they brought him off the bench. I think he can. But I also feel like in order for Tyrese Maxey to be that guy, you need to surround him around a pretty good veteran point guard. They'll enable him to be able to, receive the ball, get in his spots, and score. The problem with Tyrese, a lot of people in Philadelphia think that once James leaves, Tyrese could just slide over and be the one. But I feel like in this stage of his career, he's better off as an undersized two than he is running the team as a point guard. I don't think he's quite there yet. So, yes, if you get someone else in there, like a veteran point guard who can run the team, Tyrese is going to thrive, but he's not going to thrive right now at this stage as a one.
Catching up with Keith Pompey from the Philly Inquirer. Interesting, Keith talked about Embiid, and you said when he said what he said last week, he was talking, in your view, to Daryl Morey. So what was your read of the Daryl Morey interview? That is, Daryl Morey with the interview, what was he really saying, and who was he saying it to, in your opinion?
I feel like you're talking about when he was talking about Joel, that point when he said, hey, Joel, this and that. I feel like he was basically talking to the fans. I felt like he was trying to make it seem like everything is good, because what he said is, Joel loves Philly. He does this. And then also he doubled down and said that, Joel was trolling, right? That he was trolling. And to me, we all know Joel wasn't trolling. What happened is he said something, it got the wrong reaction, and then all of a sudden it was like, hey, I was only playing. But nah, bro, you weren't playing. So I felt like that was more of, for lack of a better word, like that was a PR move to make it
like
seem
damage
like,
control in a way, almost damage control. Yeah.
Thank you. Damage control. Like, this house isn't on fire, but look at the flames.
This is fine. This is totally fine.
Yeah. We're good.
Yeah. I'm curious, is there still a portion of Philadelphia Sixers fans that look all the way back to the moving on from Jimmy Butler as the thing that kind of got things going into motion in a bad way?
Oh, no doubt. No doubt. I mean, it's crazy. Like, Jimmy Butler, his being traded out of Philadelphia is made him, and the way the Sixers are going, like, if you couldn't erect a statue for an opposing player or someone who's only been in the team for 7 months or less than that, Jimmy's going to get one, dude. I'm telling you, like, he might have his own version of a Rocky movie in Philly. I mean, I love Jimmy Butler. And let's be honest, when we look at that team, that team, when you think about it, the starting five of Jimmy Butler, Ben Simmons, JJ Redick, Tobias Harris, Joel Embiid, they were on the cover of Sports Illustrated. And they ended up losing to the eventual NBA champions because of a 4-bounce shot by Kawhi, right? And everyone kind of knew that Kawhi wasn't coming back. Like, he wanted to go to California. So you look at it, and this all the time, the Sixers kept saying, oh, we're going to bring them all back. We're going to bring them all back. And it didn't happen. And then ever since that time, they struck out with Al Horford. They traded Jimmy Butler for Josh Richardson. And then all of a sudden they went out there and they got Seth Curry and they got Danny Green. And then next thing you know, you trade them and then you bring in James Harden. I mean, Ben Simmons for James Harden. And it just seems like that 2018 was the best team to win a championship for the Sixers. They were that close, and they just blew it all up. So yeah, like you can look at it. I mean, the process was complete. They had their guys. They were on the cover of Sports Illustrated. They had a shooter to go with Joel. They had Tobias. They had, Jimmy running the show. And it just seems like, the Sixers, that was their downfall. Like, no one was talking about Ben Simmons can't shoot. No one said that because of all the firepower that they had at the other positions.
So, Keith, that backbreaking loss to the Raptors, of course, the coach that beat them was Nick Nurse. He's now there. So how does he fit into all this discontent and all these moving parts right now?
For him, I think he fits in well, right? I think the discontent isn't good for him. I feel like, if they hurry up and get a roster and you can look at what the pieces you're going to have around Joel Embiid, I think that Nick Nurse is going to be good for Joel's game. I think that Nick Nurse is going to be good for Tobias Harris, right? I think those are going to be the two biggest beneficiaries, because you look at Tobias, he's the prototypical guy that Nick Nurse has had a lot of success with. 6'9", he's athletic for a power forward, put the ball on the ground. Look at Pascal Siakam, look at the other guys, right, that he had. And I think with Joel Embiid, it's one of those things that Nick Nurse thinks so outside the box. And Joel Embiid is not your prototypical big, that he's going to be able to have a lot of success. Now, with all that being said, I feel like the longer this James Harden things goes on, you're putting Nick Nurse in a bad spot, because it's like, okay, now do we divide something around James, and then all of a sudden when somebody else comes in, we got to fit them in? And I just feel like when the longer they wait, is going to put the coach in a tough spot, because let's face it, it's get out of the second round or bust for this team. Like, this is something they haven't done. It's not like everybody says they want to win a championship, but if this Sixers don't get to the Eastern Conference finals, this season is a failure for them.
You know, Nick Nurse also poached a fan favorite here, Bobby Jackson, onto his coaching staff. Just curious, how has Nick Nurse built out that coaching staff so far?
You know what? I kind of like it. You know, Bobby Jackson, I feel like, you know, he's, and you guys, like you said, a fan favorite. You know, I feel like, you know, he's a underrated coach. I mean, I could see him in a couple years, like, you know, somebody else is going to poach him from Nick Nurse's staff to be a head coach, right? You know, I like that. I like the fact that it seems like all these guys that Nick picked up, for the most part, are guys who he either had the utmost respect for, or guys who he has a relationship for and help get into coaching. So, and from all I can say is, you know, I talked to a source, and the source said to me that it's been really refreshing around there. Like, these coaches bring a different approach, but also it's like the guys respect them. Like, they all know about him. So I think it's been a good hire. You know, he's hiring a good staff.
Keith Pompey, thank you, Keith. Very educational. We appreciate your time very, very much. Hope you're enjoying your summer. Hope we get to talk to you again real soon.
Yes.
Thank you, Keith.
Yeah, thanks for having me on the show, y'all.
Appreciate
Absolutely. You're very welcome. So Sixers have a lot to do, and now summer league's over, so we're closer to real basketball. So which NBA teams have the most to do now between now and the start of the next season? Philly's probably on that list, right? That's next year. This is Whitey and Watkins, Sactown Sports.